Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of Earth's last defense station. His breath made small clouds on the glass as he watched the alien ships fill the darkness of space. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars. Red lights, blue lights, and colors he had no names for blinked across the enemy fleet like angry fireflies. "Sir, they're sending another message," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear. Underneath, they all knew what was coming. Jake turned away from the window. The bridge of Luna Defense Station was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers. 23 men and women worked at their posts, trying to look brave.
Most of
them were young. It's too young for this. "Put it on screen," Jake said. The main display lit up with the image of a tall, gray alien. Its skin looked like smooth stone, and its black eyes were too large for its head. This was Ambassador Veltar of the Zellerie, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Jake had seen this face many times over the past few months, always delivering bad news. "Commander Morrison," the alien's voice came through the speakers like grinding metal. "The Galactic Federation has reached its final decision. All human military forces must surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species." Jake's hands made fists at his sides. "And if we surrender, your species will be relocated to work colonies throughout the galaxy. You will be given food, shelter, and medical care. This is more mercy than your kind deserves." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent again. 3 months ago, everything had been different. Captain Lisa Warren had returned from the Federation, council full of hope. She thought the other species would listen to reason. She thought they would understand that humans only wanted to be part of the galactic community. Jake remembered her excitement as she talked about the wonders she had seen. Cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, space elevators that reached from planet surfaces to the stars, technologies that could heal any disease or fix any injury. "They're afraid of us," Lisa had said during her first briefing. "But fear can turn into respect. We just need to show them we're not a threat." The fear had grown instead. Every human invention, every new ship, every colony established, made the aliens more nervous. The Zellerie spoke in the council about humanity's dangerous growth rate. The insect-like Kresh complained that human military advances were destabilizing. Galactic peace. The breaking point came when Earth announced plans to explore the Andromeda Galaxy. Dr. Ryan Cox, Earth's chief scientist, had developed a new, faster-than-light drive that could make the journey possible. To humans, it was the next step in exploration. To the aliens, it was proof that humanity could never be controlled. Jake walked to the communications station. "Get me Admiral Rick Hayes on Luna Base." The screen flickered, and Admiral Hayes appeared. His gray hair was messy, and his uniform was torn. Behind him, Jake could see smoke and flashing red lights. "Jake, we can't hold much longer," Hayes said without greeting. "They're using some kind of neural weapon. My people are just ... stopping. They stand there like statues, then they walk to the alien ships." Jake felt cold spread through his chest. Neural control? Collars they're putting on prisoners? Dr. Foster thinks it's some kind of brain control device. Once they put it on you, you can't think for yourself anymore. Amy Foster looked up from her station. "Admiral, I've been studying the captured signals. The control frequency seems to work on most species, but there might be some resistance in human brains. We're different somehow." Hayes nodded grimly. "Different enough to stay free, or just different enough to suffer longer, before anyone could." Answer. Alarms started screaming throughout the station. Jake ran back to the window and saw alien fighters racing toward them like a swarm of deadly insects. "Battle stations," he shouted. The fight was over in minutes. Earth's weapons advanced. As they were, could not match technology developed over thousands of years. Jake watched his fighters explode one by one, each flash of light representing friends he would never see again. The station shook as alien boarding pods attached to the hull. Jake drew his sidearm and looked at his crew. Remember he told them? No matter what they do to our bodies, they can't touch who we are inside. We're human, That has to count for something. The blast doors exploded inward. Tall, armored figures poured through the opening. The Kresh soldiers moved like machines, their forearms carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Behind them came the Zellerai with their neural-controlled devices. Jake fired his weapon, but the bullets bounced off alien armor like raindrops. A Kresh soldier pointed a strange gun at him, and Jake felt electricity run through his body. He fell to the ground, unable to move. Through blurry vision, he watched the aliens put metal collars around his crew's necks. One by one, his people stood up with empty eyes and walked quietly to the alien ships. Amy Foster was the last. She looked at Jake for a moment. He thought he saw something in her eyes, a spark that the collar couldn't quite kill. Then she was gone, and Jake was alone. The Zellery commander stood over him. "Your resistance is ended, human. Your species will now serve the galaxy in a more ... useful capacity." Jake tried to speak but couldn't make his throat work. The alien's foot pressed down on his chest. "Do not think this is cruelty," the alien continued. "For 800 years, the Federation has maintained peace through order. Young species always think they know better. They expand too quickly, develop weapons too dangerous, upset the balance that keeps everyone safe. We have learned that some species must be guided by wiser minds." The alien gestured to another soldier who approached with a collar. "Your people will work in our mines, grow food on our agricultural worlds, help with our research. You will be fed, housed, and cared for. Many of your kind will live longer, healthier lives than they would have on this primitive world." Jake found his voice. "Slaves. Workers," the alien corrected. "The Federation does not practice slavery. We practice management." The collar closed around Jake's neck with a soft click. Immediately, he felt his thoughts become fuzzy. It was like trying to think through thick fog. He could still remember who he was, but the urge to resist was fading away. "Stand up," the alien commanded. Jake's body obeyed before his mind could protest. He stood and walked toward the ships with the others. Part of him screamed to fight, but that part was getting smaller and quieter. As Earth grew smaller behind the transport ships, Jake pressed his face against a small window. Down on the planet's surface, he could see more alien ships landing, more humans being loaded onto transports. The great cities of Earth were already going dark as their populations were removed. The woman next to him was crying, but her tears were silent and her face was blank. The collar let them feel sadness, but not hope. Let them remember the past, but not plan for the future. Jake closed his eyes and tried to hold on to one thought. Somewhere out there, other humans were fighting. Maybe some had escaped. Maybe some were hiding. The aliens thought they had one, but they didn't understand humans very well. They would learn. The transport ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their human cargo toward a future of servitude. Behind them, Earth spun alone in space. Empty and quiet for the first time in thousands of years. The Galactic Federation's greatest victory was complete. The dangerous young species had been contained. Peace would reign for another 1,000 years, or so they thought. 5 years had passed since the last human ship fell silent. Galactic Federation breathed easier now. Reports from across the galaxy showed the same thing. Humans worked quietly in the mines, farms, and factories. The dangerous species had been tamed on the mining world of Kepler-4 for to be. The red sun cast long shadows across the rocky landscape. Former Marine Colonel Dan Brooks swung his pick at the crystal formations in the deep tunnels. The metal collar around his neck hummed softly, keeping his thoughts slow and his body obedient. But something was different about Dan's collar. Something the aliens had not noticed. When the Kresh guards walked by, Dan worked like all the others. His movements were steady and mechanical. His face showed no emotion. But when the guards disappeared around the corner, Dan's eyes became sharp and alert. He tapped his pick against the wall 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. From deeper in the tunnel came an answer. 2 taps, then 3 more. Dan smiled slightly and went back to mining. The smile lasted only a second before his face became blank again. The guards had good hearing, but they did not understand human signals. In the food hall that evening, Dan sat with the other miners. They ate the gray paste that the aliens provided without speaking. The callers made conversation difficult and dangerous. But Dan watched the others carefully. When he scratched his left ear, the woman across from him scratched her right ear. When he touched his nose, the man beside him did the same. Simple signals, but they meant everything. The network was growing. After the meal, Dan walked slowly back to the sleeping quarters. His steps looked random, but he passed close to certain people. A former pilot named Carl Webb, a scientist called Maria Santos, an engineer named Tony Bell. Each time, Dan's fingers moved slightly. Sign language learned in the military now, used to keep hope alive. The signs were simple, but powerful. Remember who you are. They cannot break us. We will be free. The aliens had studied human communication for months before the invasion. They knew about human languages, radio signals, and computer codes. But they had missed something important. They did not understand that humans could talk without words in another part of the galaxy. Dr. Amy Foster worked in a Zellery research facility. Her job was to study human brain patterns for the Neural Control Project. Aliens wanted to make the callers work better, and they needed a human expert to help them. Amy's caller was different from the others. Zellery had modified it too. Let her think more clearly. They needed her scientific mind to work properly, but they had made a mistake. They had given her just enough freedom to be dangerous. Every day, Amy studied brain scans of other humans. She saw how the callers affected different people. Most humans showed the expected patterns: reduced creativity, limited problem solving, obedience to commands. But some scans were different. About 1 in every 50 humans showed unusual brain activity. The callers worked on them, but not completely. These people could still think creative thoughts. They could still make plans. They could still remember what freedom felt like. Amy kept this discovery secret. In her reports, she wrote that all humans responded the same way to control. But in her private notes, hidden in her own brain where the aliens could not read, she remembered everything. The breakthrough came when Amy realized why some humans resisted the callers. Human brains were still evolving. Most galactic species had stopped changing millions of years ago. Their minds worked the same way as their ancestors. But humans were different. Human brains adapted and grew throughout their lives. The callers were designed for alien minds that never changed. They could not handle a brain that kept rewiring itself. Some humans, especially those who had learned many different skills, and their lives were too complex for the simple controlled devices. Amy began to understand something else. The aliens had made their greatest mistake by separating humans from each other. On Earth, humans worked together. They shared ideas and helped each other solve problems. Alone, a human was just one person. Together, they were something much more powerful. On the agricultural world of New Eden, former engineer Tony Bell worked in the vast fields of alien crops. The plants were strange. Some grew in the air, others produced food that glowed in the dark. Tony's job was to maintain the harvesting machines that collected the crops. The machines were advanced beyond anything from Earth. But Tony had learned something interesting about alien technology. It was very complex, but not very flexible. The aliens built machines to do exactly one job very well. But if something unexpected happened, the machines could not adapt. Human machines were different. They were simpler but more flexible. Human could use a screwdriver as a hammer if needed. A human could fix a broken machine with parts from another machine. Humans could improvise. Tony began to apply this knowledge to his work. When a harvesting machine broke down, he did not fix it the way the manual said. Instead, he found creative solutions. He used parts in ways the aliens had never thought of. He made improvements that the original designers could never imagine. The alien supervisors were pleased. The machines worked better than ever. Was learning. Every repair taught him more about alien technology. Every improvement showed him new possibilities. Late at night, when the guards were sleeping, Tony worked on secret projects. He had found a way to communicate with other human workers using the electrical systems in the machines. Tiny changes in power levels created patterns that looked like normal machine operations. But to another engineer they were messages. The messages spread from New Eden to other agricultural worlds. Engineers talked to other engineers, shared what they had learned about alien technology. Slowly, a picture began to form. The aliens were not as advanced as they appeared. Their technology was old and unchanging. They had stopped innovating thousands of years ago. They were powerful because they had accumulated knowledge over time, not because they were smarter than humans. On a space station orbiting a gas giant, former NASA scientist Kate Murphy cleaned the laboratories where alien researchers worked. Scientists ignored her completely. To them, she was just another human drone, barely smarter than the cleaning robots. Kate used their blindness against them. While she cleaned, she listened. While she emptied trash cans, she looked at discarded papers. While she maintained equipment, she learned how it worked. Kate discovered something amazing. Aliens communicated across the galaxy using a network of relay stations. The network carried everything: government orders, military communications, scientific data, even personal messages. And it was not as secure as the aliens thought. Kate had studied stellar radiation on Earth. She knew how cosmic rays and solar flares could affect electronic systems. What the aliens saw as random noise in their communications, Kate recognized as patterns. The universe itself was sending messages. Kate began to use this knowledge to hide her own messages in the communication network. She encoded information. In the natural background radiation that filled space, to alien sensors, it looked like normal cosmic noise. But to a human scientist who knew what to look for, it was a clear signal. The first message Kate sent was simple. "Is anyone listening?" Answer came 3 days later from a human working on a mining station, 12 light years away. "We are all listening." Within weeks, Kate's network connected humans across dozens of star systems: scientists, engineers, soldiers, pilots, doctors, and teachers, all sharing information, all remembering who they were. The aliens had scattered humanity across the galaxy to keep them weak. But they had accidentally created something they could never control: a network of human intelligence that spanned the stars. In the Zellery Research Facility, Amy Foster made her most important discovery. She found records of other species that had been enslaved by the Federation. The reptilian Vorth, conquered 800 years ago. The aquatic Murhai, taken 600 years ago. The flying ether, destroyed 400 years ago when they refused to surrender. The Federation called itself peaceful, but it was built on slavery and genocide. Any species that grew too quickly or developed too many new technologies was either enslaved or eliminated. The Federation did not want competition. They wanted control. Amy realized that humanity was not the first to face this fate, but they might be the first to survive it. The network was spreading. The resistance was growing. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, hope was returning to human hearts. Kate Murphy's discovery changed everything. Her hidden messages in the cosmic radiation had connected human minds across 47 star systems. But the message that arrived on a cold morning in the 8th year of slavery was different from all the others. Kate was cleaning the observation deck when her hidden receiver picked up the signal. The pattern in the stellar radiation was more complex than anything she had seen before. It took her 3 hours to decode it completely, working. In small moments when the alien scientists were not watching, the message was from Dr. Amy Foster. Found the truth. Federation has done this before. We are not the first. We'll send proof. Over the next week, Amy's transmissions revealed the horrible history of the Galactic Federation. Species after species had been conquered or destroyed. The peaceful empire that claimed to protect the galaxy was built on the bones of younger races, the reptilian. Vorth had once been proud warriors who explored the stars with the same curiosity as humans. When they developed weapons that threatened Federation control, they were enslaved. Now only a few thousand remained, working in the deepest mines where the dangerous radiation would kill most other species. Amy had found one of them in her research facility. His name was Sektar, and he had been a soldier before the Callers. Unlike the humans, his collar was old and poorly maintained. Sometimes late at night, his true mind would break through the control. Your species shows promise. He had whispered to Amy during one of these moments. "The Vorth thought we were strong, but you humans are different. You do not just fight, you adapt." Amy learned that the Vorth had tried 3 major rebellions in 800 years. Each time, they fought bravely, but predictably. The Federation knew how warriors thought and planned accordingly. The rebellions were crushed before they could spread. "But you humans," Sektar continued, "you do not fight like warriors. You fight like survivors." It frightens them more than any weapon. The knowledge spread through Kate's network like wildfire. On mining worlds and agricultural planets, in research stations and factory ships, humans learned they were part of a pattern that stretched back thousands of years. They were not the first victims, but they might be the last. On the industrial world of Titan Prime, former Navy SEAL Logan Price received Kate's transmission while working in a massive manufacturing complex. The factory produced weapons for the Federation fleet, and Logan had been studying the production process for 2 years. Logan had discovered something important about alien psychology. The different species of the Federation were very predictable. The Zelari always chose the most logical option. The Kresh always followed orders exactly. The insectoid Naltor always moved in perfect coordination. Humans were different. Human soldiers learned to be unpredictable. They would retreat when they should attack when they should retreat, and find completely new options that no enemy expected. It had made them dangerous fighters on Earth. It could make them impossible to control in space. Logan began to share this knowledge with other former military personnel across the galaxy. Through Kate's network, he sent training messages disguised as stellar radiation patterns. How to move without being noticed. How to sabotage equipment without getting caught. How to turn alien technology against itself. The first coordinated action came 6 months later. On 12 different worlds, human work teams reported equipment failures at exactly the same time. Mining drills stopped working. Harvesting machines broke down. Factory production lines went silent. The aliens were puzzled but not alarmed. Equipment failed sometimes. He sent repair teams and ordered the humans to work harder to make up for lost time. They did not understand that the failures were connected. Logan smiled as he watched Kresh engineers trying to fix a weapons assembly line. They followed their repair manuals exactly, but the manual did not cover what to do when someone had rewired the entire system in ways that made no logical sense. The aliens could build amazing machines, but they could not think like the humans who were breaking them. Meanwhile, on a moon orbiting the gas giant Kepler-62f, former astronaut Helen Carter worked in the Federation's Central Archive. Her job was to sort through millions of historical documents, organizing them for alien researchers who were too important to do such simple work themselves. Helen had the greatest treasure of all: access to the Federation's real history. In the deepest files, she found records that the Federation did not want anyone to see. Reports of species that had been completely wiped out. Plans for controlling problematic populations. Secret orders to eliminate any group that might threaten Federation stability. The most shocking discovery was a document titled The Human Solution. It had been written before the invasion of Earth. The Federation had not acted out of fear. It planned humanity's enslavement for decades. Humans show unprecedented adaptability and growth potential, the document read. If allowed to continue unrestricted development, they will surpass all Federation species within 500 years. Recommended action: complete enslavement with gradual population reduction. Target: 90% reduction over 200 years. Helen's hands shook as she read the words. The Federation had not just enslaved humanity. They had planned to slowly kill them off until only a small, manageable population remained. But Helen found something else in the files. Reports from the past 8 years showing that the human population in slavery was not decreasing. It was growing. Despite the hard work, poor food, and dangerous conditions, humans were surviving better than the Federation had expected. More importantly, human children born in slavery were showing unusual resistance to the neural collars. The Federation scientists were worried about this but had not found a solution. They had expected human adaptation to slow down over time. Instead, it was speeding up. Helen sent this information to Kate's network, and it reached every human in the galaxy within days. They were not dying out. They were getting stronger. Dr. Amy Foster received Helen's transmissions with growing excitement. Her own research had shown the same thing. Human brains were changing in response to the neural collars, not breaking down, but evolving new ways to resist control. The children were the key. Kids who had grown up with the collars learned to think around them. They could follow orders when necessary, but keep their true thoughts hidden. They were developing mental abilities that no other species possessed. Amy began to test this theory carefully. During her research, she observed young humans who had been born in slavery. Their brain patterns were unlike anything in Federation records. They could switch between controlled and free thinking almost instantly. They were learning to live double lives even as children. But Amy's most important discovery came when she found the Federation's backup plan. In a classified file marked Final Solution, she learned what the aliens would do if the neural collars ever stopped working. The plan was simple and horrible: complete extermination. If humans could not be controlled, they would be eliminated. Every man, woman, and child. The Federation had built special weapons for this purpose. Hidden on secret bases throughout the galaxy, Amy realized that the Resistance Network was more important than anyone knew. They were not just fighting for freedom, they were fighting for survival. The Federation would never let humanity go free. The choice was resistance or extinction. On the mining world of Kepler 44, to be. Don Brooks received Amy's warning through Kate's network. He was in the deep tunnels when the message arrived, tapping against the crystal formations with his pick. But now, each tap carried new meaning. Dan looked around at the other miners working beside him. Former teachers, doctors, engineers, and soldiers. People who had once built hospitals and schools and spaceships. Now they dug crystals from alien rock and lived in metal dormitories. But they were still human. They still remembered Earth. They still dreamed of stars and freedom. And now they knew the truth about their situation. Dan made his decision. That night, he sent a message through the network to every human in the galaxy. The message was short but clear. The time for hiding is over. They plan to kill us all. Hey, we fight now or we die as slaves. Choose. The responses came back within hours. From mining worlds and factory ships, from research stations and agricultural planets, the answer was the same. We choose to fight. The galaxy was about to change forever. The rebellion began at exactly the same moment across 47 worlds. It was 12 o'clock, Galactic Standard Time, when the first human broke free from their collar. On the mining world of Kepler 44 to be, Don Brooks had spent months preparing for this moment. He and his team had discovered that the neural collars had a weakness. They needed to recharge every 24 hours by connecting to Federation power stations. For exactly 3 minutes during the recharge cycle, the collars went offline. Dan had timed everything perfectly. When his collar went silent, he grabbed the plasma cutter he had hidden in the crystal formations. The tool was meant for mining, but it cut through crush armor, just as easily as it cut through rock. The alien guards never saw him coming. Dan moved through the tunnels like a ghost, freeing other humans as their collars recharged. Within an hour, 300 former slaves were armed and angry. Remember, Dan told his fighters as they prepared to take the main compound, "We're not just fighting for ourselves. Every human in the galaxy is counting on us." Meanwhile, on the industrial world of Titan Prime, Logan Price led his team in. The most daring part of the plan was the weapons factory where they worked contained enough firepower to arm a small fleet. The problem was getting to it. Logan had studied the alien guards for 2 years. He knew that Kresh soldiers thought in straight lines, expected attacks to come from the most logical direction. So Logan did something completely illogical. His team attacked through the factory's waste disposal system. He crawled through pipes filled with toxic chemicals and came up inside the armory. The guards were watching the doors and windows. They never thought to watch the floor. By the time the alarms started screaming, Logan's team had already seized enough weapons to arm every human on the planet. Former Marines and Army Rangers who had been pretending to be broken slaves suddenly became soldiers again. Time to show these bugs what happens when you mess with Earth. Logan said as he handed out pulse rifles to his fighters. On the research station orbiting Kepler 62F, Helen Carter was putting the second part of the plan into action. While the warriors fought, she was stealing the Federation's most important secret, the location of every human slave in the galaxy. Helen had spent 3 years learning the Federation's computer systems. The aliens thought their networks were perfectly secure, but they had never faced a human hacker, then could think in ways that no alien programmer had ever imagined. She uploaded a virus into the Federation's central database. The virus looked like a normal system update, but it was actually copying every file about human prisoners. Ship locations, guard numbers, transport schedules, everything the rebellion needed to coordinate a galaxy-wide rescue mission. Got it, Helen whispered as the data finished copying. Behind her, she could hear Federation soldiers breaking down the door to her workstation, but it was too late. The information was already transmitting to Kate Murphy's network. The rebellion spread faster than the Federation could respond. On agricultural worlds, human workers turned farming equipment into weapons. On factory ships, engineers reprogrammed manufacturing robots to fight their former masters. On mining stations, slaves used industrial tools to cut through alien defenses. But the most important battle was happening in space. Former pilot Megan Torres had been working on a Federation battlecruiser for 6 years, cleaning the ship and maintaining its systems. The aliens never suspected that she was also learning how to fly it. When the rebellion began, Megan was ready. She had secretly modified the ship's computer systems, giving herself access to all the controls. When her collar went offline during its recharge cycle, she struck. The Federation crew never knew what hit them. Megan had learned their daily routines perfectly. She knew exactly where each alien would be at any given time. Her plan was simple, brutal, and completely effective. First, she cut off the artificial gravity in the crew quarters. The aliens floated helplessly while she vented atmosphere from their sections of the ship. Then she took control of the bridge and sent a message to the Federation fleet. "This is Captain Megan Torres of the Earth Liberation Force. Your ship is now under human control. Surrender or be destroyed." The Federation admiral who received the message could not believe what he was hearing. Humans were not capable of such tactics. They were supposed to be controlled, predictable, harmless. "Impossible," Admiral Zelthor said to his bridge crew. "Humans cannot learn our technology. They are too primitive." But across the galaxy, humans were proving that the Federation had badly underestimated them. On dozens of worlds, alien commanders found themselves facing an enemy they did not understand. The Zelari expected logical, planned attacks. Instead, humans used chaos and confusion. They would strike at 3 different targets simultaneously, retreat without warning, then attack from a completely different direction. The Kresh expected enemies to follow military rules. Instead, humans used civilian disguises, improvised weapons, and tactics that no military academy had ever taught. The insectoid Naltor expected coordinated group actions. Instead, individual humans made independent decisions that somehow worked together in ways that no alien could predict. Dr. Ryan Cox, the scientist who had developed Earth's faster-than-light drive, was leading the rebellion on a research station near the galactic core. But Cox was not just fighting with weapons. He was fighting with his mind. Cox had spent 8 years studying alien psychology. He understood how their rigid social systems worked. The Federation species had not changed their thinking in thousands of years. They could not adapt to new situations. Quickly, Cox used this weakness against them. He sent false messages through the Federation communication network using the aliens' own codes and procedures. The messages ordered Federation ships to wrong locations, told commanders to expect attacks that never came, and created confusion throughout their military. "Sir, we're receiving contradictory orders," a Kresh captain reported to his admiral. "Follow standard protocol," the admiral replied. But there was no standard protocol for dealing with an enemy that could think like a Federation officer, but act like a human. While the military battles raged, Dr. Amy Foster was fighting a different kind of war. In her research facility, she had found something that could change everything. The control codes for every neural collar in the galaxy. Amy had been studying the collar network for years. She knew that all the devices were connected to a central control system. If she could access that system, she could free every enslaved human at once. The problem was that the control center was located on the Federation's most heavily defended station. It was surrounded by battle fleets and protected by the best security in the galaxy. Direct assault would be suicide. But Amy had a better idea. She had been working with the Vorth prisoner sector, had learned something important about the old reptilian warrior. His collar was not just poorly maintained, it was connected to the original control network from 800 years ago. The old system still exists, Sectar explained during one of his lucid moments. They built a new network on top of it, but they never removed the old codes. If you can access the ancient protocols, you can override everything, Amy began, working frantically to decode the old Vorth control system. It was incredibly complex, but she had advantages that the original Federation programmers never expected. Human creativity and intuition allowed her to see patterns that pure logic missed as the battles continued across the galaxy. Amy finally cracked the code. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she input the ancient commands. The computer resisted. At first, confused by instructions that were centuries old, but slowly the system began to respond. One by one, Amy activated the override commands. On mining worlds and factory ships, on research stations and agricultural planets, neural collars began to fail. Humans who had been slaves for years suddenly found their minds. It's clear and free. The effect was immediate and devastating to the Federation. Millions of controlled workers suddenly became millions of angry fighters. The rebellion that had started on 47 worlds now exploded across the entire galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison, who had been working in a crystal mine for 8 years, felt his collar go silent and knew exactly what it meant. He looked around at the hundreds of other miners, who were touching their necks in amazement. "Brothers and sisters," Jake said, his voice carrying across the cavern, "we are free. Now let's go home." The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. For the first time in 8 years, every human in the galaxy could think their own thoughts and make their own choices. And they all chose the same thing: freedom. 3 years after the Great Rebellion began, the galaxy looked very different. Where once the Federation's mighty fleets had patrolled every star system, now human ships flew freely through space. The war that was supposed to last months had become a complete transformation of galactic civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the former Federation dreadnought New Earth, watching the final battle unfold in the Zellery home system. The alien fleet was retreating toward their capital world, but there was nowhere left to run. Human forces controlled every escape route. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zellery High Command," reported Communications Officer Kate Murphy. She had come a long way from hiding messages in stellar radiation. Now she coordinated communications for the entire human fleet. Jake nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the same gray alien face that had delivered humanity's death sentence 12 years ago. But Ambassador Veltar looked very different now. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by something Jake had never seen in a Zellery before: fear. "Admiral Morrison." The alien's voice was no longer commanding, it was pleading. "The Zellery Union requests immediate ceasefire negotiations. We are prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict." Jake looked. Around his bridge, former slaves from dozens of worlds now served as his officers. Dr. Amy Foster worked at the science station, her expertise in neural technology making her invaluable for fleet operations. Logan Price commanded the tactical systems. His knowledge of guerrilla warfare adapted perfectly to space combat. "You want to discuss terms?" Jake asked. "The same way you discussed terms with humanity 12 years ago?" Veltar's large black eyes seemed to shrink. "Admiral, we understand that mistakes were made. The Federation was overly cautious in its approach to your species. We are willing to make reparations." "Mistakes?" Logan Price stepped forward, his voice hard with anger. "You enslaved our entire species. You plan to slowly exterminate Us. You call that a mistake? On the view screen, other alien faces appeared beside Veltar. Representatives of the Kresh, the Naltor, the Aquari, and a dozen other Federation species. They all wore the same expression of desperate fear. "Please," said the Kresh ambassador, its insect-like voice trembling. "We only followed the will of the Council." The decision to enslave humanity was unanimous, but it was based on incomplete information. Dr. Amy Foster laughed bitterly from her station. "Incomplete information? I've read your files. You planned our enslavement for decades. You knew exactly what you were doing." The truth was that the Federation had never faced anything like the human rebellion. Their military strategies were based on fighting other Federation species, predictable enemies who followed logical patterns. Humans fought like no one they had ever encountered. General Dan Brooks, leading ground forces on Zellery Prime, had already captured 3 major cities using tactics that no alien commander could understand. His troops moved like flowing water, adapting to every obstacle, finding weaknesses where none should exist. Captain Megan Torres commanded a squadron of captured Federation ships flown by human crews. Her pilots had learned to use the advanced alien technology in ways its original designers never imagined. They flew battle formations that looked like chaos, but worked with deadly efficiency. The Federation's greatest advantage, their superior technology, had become their weakness. Their ships and weapons were designed to be operated by logical, predictable minds. In human hands, the same technology became unpredictable and dangerous. But the war's turning point had not come from military victories alone. The real change began when other enslaved species joined the human rebellion. On the prison world of Vorthak, the surviving members of the reptilian Vorth race had broken free from their ancient chains. Sektar, the old warrior who had helped Dr. Foster crack the collar codes, now led his people in their first taste of freedom in 800 years. "For 8 centuries, we dreamed of this moment," Sektar told Jake during a strategy meeting. "But we could never have achieved it alone. Humans fight not just with weapons, but with hope. You have given us something we had forgotten: the belief that victory is possible." The aquatic Murhai had also joined the rebellion, bringing their knowledge of underwater worlds and their hatred of Federation oppression. Flying ether, who had been thought extinct, emerged from hidden colonies to add their aerial combat skills to the human cause. Species after species that had been conquered or enslaved over the millennia came forward to fight alongside humanity. The Federation's greatest secret, that their peaceful empire was built on systematic oppression, was now known throughout the galaxy. But Jake knew that military victory was not enough. If humans simply replaced the Federation with their own empire, nothing would really change. The galaxy needed something completely new. "All Federation ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake broadcast to the alien fleet. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. After that, we will consider you hostile targets." Within 30 minutes, the first Federation ships began transmitting surrender codes. Within an hour, the entire fleet had laid down their weapons. The war was over. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same council chambers where humanity had been condemned to slavery. But the Great Hall looked very different now. Where once only Federation species had sat in judgment, now hundreds of different races filled the seats. Former slaves, conquered peoples, and even some Federation species who had opposed the old system. President Susan Clark, elected by the free human colonies, addressed the assembly. "We are not here to build a new empire," she said. "We're here to make sure that what happened to humanity and to so many other species can never happen again." The new Galactic Constitution was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of a ruling council of powerful species, it established equal representation for all races. Instead of maintaining order through force, it promoted growth and diversity. Instead of enslaving younger species, it protected their right to develop freely. The Federation species struggled to adapt to the new system. For thousands of years, they had maintained power through careful control and rigid hierarchy. Now they had to learn to live as equals with species they had once enslaved. Some adapted better than others. The Equerry, who had always been peaceful, embraced the new order. Gladly. They had voted for humanity's enslavement out of fear, not hatred. They worked hard to make amends. The crystalline silicates, impressed by human engineering skills, became eager partners in developing new technologies. They learned that human creativity could improve their own rigid designs in ways they had never imagined. But others found the change more difficult. The proud Zelari struggled to accept that their ancient wisdom was no longer automatically respected. The militaristic Kresh had trouble understanding a galaxy where problems were solved through negotiation rather than force. Dr. Amy Foster, serving as the new government's chief scientist, worked with representatives from across the galaxy to ensure that neural control technology could never be used again. The collar networks were dismantled, and the knowledge of how to build them was sealed away. "We're not destroying this technology out of revenge," Amy explained to the council. "We're destroying it because no sentient being should ever have their thoughts controlled by another." On Earth, which had been restored and repopulated, former engineer Tony Bell led teams that were rebuilding human civilization with the help of former enemies. Zelari architects worked alongside human engineers to design cities that combined alien efficiency with human creativity. Children played in parks where humans, Forth Murhai, and even young Zelari learned together. It was a sight that would have been impossible under the old Federation system. Logan Price, now a general in the new Galactic Defense Force, reflected on how much had changed. "The Federation's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating our military power," he told a gathering of former rebels. "It was underestimating our capacity for forgiveness." Indeed, humanity had chosen not to seek revenge against their former oppressors. Instead, they offered something the galaxy had never seen: the chance for everyone to start over as equals. The galaxy learned that the species they had voted to enslave possessed something none of them had: the wisdom to know that true victory came not from conquest, but from lifting everyone up together. As Jake Morrison walked through the rebuilt streets of New Geneva on Earth, watching human children play with alien friends, he smiled. The collar around his neck was long gone, but he would never forget what it felt like to be enslaved. That memory would help ensure that no species would ever suffer the same fate again. Humanity had not just won their freedom. They had freed an entire galaxy from a system that had enslaved it for millennia. And in doing so, they had proven that the greatest strength was not the power to dominate others, but the courage to set them free.